Hi there, I'm making a brief video to explain what we need for Experiment 2, our next density lab. The original list had quite a lot of differences from the actual lab, so please take a look at our page, our material list for Lab 2, 2.01. So what we'll need in this lab, and I'll explain where and what we're going to do with it. We need some water, preferably distilled or bottled, but tap will work if that's all we have. Vegetable or cooking oil, we only need about 4 tablespoons, so not much. Just make sure it's not motor oil or something more toxic. Food coloring is optional, just a few drops if you decide to bring it. It just makes it a little bit easier to see one of the steps, but it's not required. You'll need a tablespoon for measuring out this oil. You will need a teaspoon, or if you happen to have a graduated cylinder, which I'm guessing you don't, so most people don't. Here's a teaspoon. You'll need a teaspoon as well as that tablespoon. And 2 disposable plastic cups or a glass cup, any cup that you can see through. You're going to be measuring water and oil in your spoons and putting it into these cups, so you'll need to be able to see it. Towards the third part of this lab has 4 parts. So part 3, you'll be actually measuring the density of pennies. So you'll need 20 pennies for that. Now if you don't have a scale, that's okay. So in fact, you can get away with a minimum of 1 penny. If that's all you have, 1 penny is fine. Because we actually need to measure the diameter of the penny, so you'll need a ruler for sure, and at least 1 penny, to measure the distance across a penny. If you have a scale, it's okay if you don't. There are pictures in the lab. We're going to be weighing up to 20 pennies. That's when you would need 20. But at a minimum, 1 penny, please. And let me show you the lab to see where you're going to use these. Okay, so yes, this is going to have to change quite a bit. The equipment list, we're in Lab 2, the density lab. So the first part of the lab, this is what happened to Lab 0, our first week, when you were asked to bring cups and a teaspoon. I realize now it was cut and paste to the beginning of this lab. So you will need it this time. Okay, so what you're going to do is perform accurate measurements. So you're going to be measuring out some water using your teaspoon, pouring it, and then filling cups with water, then measuring out a ½ teaspoon again. Then you're going to go to a whole teaspoon, and throughout all of this, you're going to be taking pictures of your sample to show that you've completed it. You don't need to be in these pictures. These are different trials of looking at how close your estimated volumes are. Alright, so that's the first part. That's the water and the teaspoon and the cups. This second part, B, is this is the majority of the lab. It's a simulation. So you don't need any supplies for this. You're going to be looking at blocks that float in a liquid. And you're going to be changing the density of the liquid and the density of the block, changing the volume and the mass of all the parts, and really analyzing what density means. Right? So you're going to be changing the material that the block is made out of, but it's all in the simulation. So rubber is one. Most of us don't have gold, big hunks of gold sitting around. I don't anyway. So this will you'll be able to change this in the simulation. Alright, and all of these questions are related to this simulation. Alright, and then the next part is all about the penny. So this is part C. This is when you will be measuring the diameter of the pennies, and weighing them. If you don't have a mass, the images are already within the lab with their mass, so 14, 27, and 53. It's just more meaningful if you have your own, but you can use that. And we'll be doing some calculations. We'll be calculating the mass and the area of the pennies, stacking up the pennies and measuring the heights to calculate the density. All right, and the very last part is when you're going to be using your vegetable oil. You're going to be measuring out oil and water and putting it into a clear plastic cup and looking at what happens. You can add food coloring at this point so you can see the difference between the oil and the water a little bit more cleanly, but it's not absolutely required. And that is it for this lab. This lab has a lot of thought in it, really, and thinking about what you're seeing and what you're measuring. All right, I hope that helps, and I shall see you next week. Thank you.